I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and I wouldn't normally show you a project that I think came out this bad. But I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you guys recently, so I thought I'd go ahead and show you what I did. It's a Halloween project that I thought was going to turn out really cute. I mean, in my mind, it certainly worked before I started actually doing it. The idea was that I would make some skull shapes, and then I would paint clown faces on them. So they'd be clown skulls, which I thought would be kind of fun to hang out in front of my house, you know, right beside the door for when the trick-or-treaters come. And it wouldn't be too scary because clowns are scary, but skulls aren't really, not to kids. So I thought that would be kind of fun. Well, yeah, so far it didn't work. So I'm going to show you. I actually made two of them. Here's both of them. Now, I think this is actually an idea that might have worked if it was executed better. You know, just putting the colors on there didn't work. I tried making it really old by doing some crackle stuff over it. That didn't really work either. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did this, though, partly just to show you that sometimes I do projects that don't work. But I also think there's potential for it. And the other thing is that there was a point during this whole process that I actually really liked them. So I'm going to start over. I'm just going to repaint these, go back to the point where I actually thought they were nice, just as skulls, with dark eyes and nose, so that it looked more skull-like. This is a real simplified skull shape, so a lot of things are missing, but I don't think kids will care. And I'll go ahead and hang the plain skulls next to my door, because I think it's going to be kind of fun. They're not waterproof, of course, so I'd have to bring them in if it starts to rain, but that's okay. Now, as you watch this, though, be sure to put comments down below telling me what I could have done instead, because like I said, there is a possibility that this could have worked if it was done differently. Okay, let me show you how I did it. I started out by printing 2 copies of my skull-shaped face sculpting form on full sheet labels. They're slightly smaller than normal. I think I set the printer at 90%. And then I stuck the labels on cereal box cardboard, taped them together, and covered them with a thin layer of paper mache clay. If you want more realistic skulls, you could probably go to Walmart or Joann's Fabrics or something and get a styrofoam skull and just cover it with a really thin layer of paper mache clay. Now, there is a small charge for the pattern, and I do have videos that show you how to put them together, so I'll put links to those down below. Now, you might notice that my clay is a little bit darker than usual, and that's because this is just totally experimental. I was just playing around. I had some gray WED clay. It's a wet clay, and I just happened to have it in the studio, and I thought, well, what the heck, I'll throw just a little bit of it, about maybe a quarter of a cup, into the paper mache clay mixture while I was mixing it all up. I just wanted to see if it would make a nice old bone color. And I think it did, but if you like the color, don't run out and buy 25 pounds of WED clay or any other kind of clay. It's what I use here happens to be exactly the same color as Folk Art's linen acrylic paint, which I also had in the studio. It probably would have been a lot easier to start out with that. If you put paint in the mixture of paper mache clay, though, it just ends up being really super, super light. So if you want this color and you want to use acrylic paint, then paint over the clay. Don't put the paint in the clay. It just won't work as well. After the clay was dry, I drilled holes in the top of the head so that I would be able to hang them when they were done. Now, I used a crackled white acrylic glaze over this dark paper mache clay. And the idea was that would help make the bones look older. And in order to do that, I used a method that there's a lot of YouTube videos out on it. You put a really thick coat of Elmer's glue on first, and then while the glue is still wet, you paint white directly over the wet glue. And you kind of, you don't want to paint into it so that you're mixing them together. You're actually just kind of floating the paint on top of the glue. It takes just a little while to get used to that. It's not hard, but it takes a few seconds to kind of get that idea. It works really well. I didn't use pure white. I wanted it to be somewhat transparent, and I wasn't sure if the method would work if I just thinned the acrylic paint with water. So I used golden glazing liquid instead of water, and it definitely cracked. In fact, it worked really well. Now, when the white paint was dry, I used a dark gray acrylic paint. It's called Pavement, Apple Barrels Pavement. I just happen to have it in the house. Black would have worked just fine too. I thinned it out just a little bit with the glazing liquid, and I used it for the eye sockets and the nose, just to put a shadow in those empty spaces. I used a paper towel to smudge the edges of the gray to try to make it look more like a shadow. And I admit I would normally use my finger for that smudging part if I didn't know you guys were going to be looking while I was doing it. But I actually did use my finger on the second skull, and I actually think it came out better. You get black paint all over your fingers, but it's no big deal. Now, this is the point where I actually like the skulls. In fact, when this video is finished, I'm probably going to use that linen acrylic paint to cover all of these skulls. Then I'll redo the white crackle layer to get that back. I'll darken the eye sockets and the nose. And then after that's dry, I'll go ahead and make the skulls even grungier with a final really thin glaze of burnt umber and golden glazing liquid mixed together, and I'll wipe it off with a dry paper towel just to make them look like maybe you dug them up out of the dirt. I would like them better. I don't know if the kids are going to like them better or not, but I think I would. I'm just not happy with the way these came out. But let's get back to making these into clowns. I found some clown photos that I like the faces, and I drew the shapes onto the skulls using just black, white, and red. Those are the only colors I used. This is when it became pretty obvious to me that clown faces kind of need the face. My theory, when I was first thinking this up, it started out by pretending that archaeologists had found some bones of a brand new species of humans, and they called it Clownicus americanus or something. And in this particular species of human, the bones are the same color as the skin. Kind of like the way a tiger's skin has the same stripes as their fur. And of course that would mean that clowns are born with clown faces, you know. I was being silly. But in this case, though, one thing that I think maybe is making this not work is that clown teeth aren't painted. And I did paint them. So I painted right over them, and maybe leaving them white would have helped, at least a little, but I'm not sure. I don't think it would have helped enough for me to try it. I thinned out all the colors except for the dark gray with a glazing liquid. Just try to make those areas look old. But I still wasn't happy with it, so I added more crackled transparent white and glue over the painted faces, and I still didn't like it. I'm kind of done with this whole idea myself, but if you kind of like it and you think that there's some way to save it, let me know. So that was my silly project for this week. Now, I want to mention that even though this is a really silly project and I don't think it came out very good, it was still an awful lot more fun sitting here in the studio working on it than it was watching the news on TV or the internet. And so for that reason alone, I think it was actually worth the time. Anyway, let me know down below if you think that there was any way that I could have saved this project, if there's anything I could do with it now that would make it work other than just taking it back to that previous version without the clown. Maybe you have other ideas for it that I just haven't thought of yet. Go ahead and put them down below. And if you have any other ideas for easy Halloween either masks or decorations, let us know that too down below. And if you make any, come and show them off on the Daily Sculptors page on my website at ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.